What I want to do today is take a look at chapter frameworks, and this is useful whatever you want to do, whether you're writing a blog, a chapter, or a series of chapters in a book. And what I like to do, whether I'm writing story, memoir, or how-to, I like to kind of set the scene first, because then it lets my unconscious mind, pull everything together so that we get some really, really good flow going on when it comes to that point that we put our fingers to the keyboard. So chapter frameworks give us lots and lots of benefit. They give us structure, flow. It makes things easier to write. This is a big one for me. It keeps you on track. I have a terrible confession to make. That's why I do planning. I tend to wander off and look at and think, and I have my chapter plan over there and I go, oh, yes, that's what I was supposed to be writing. But nothing is ever wasted because I can reuse all that content. And, it saves you time. When you've done a lot of pre-work, a lot of preparation, then, it just is massively time saving. So also by having a framework, when we come to the marketing piece, you're going to find it a lot easier to have the messages to promote your chapter or whatever, whatever that piece of content is. And if you're going to turn, any of your chapters into blogs, by having that framework, it lets you again set the scene. It's another kind of plan. And I often invite people to go and take a look at other authors' books and see what they like about the flow or the structure of a book. Now, one of the things I tend to do now is when I read a book, I kind of destructure it. I'm not sure that's such a word, but I deconstruct it. I kind of take it apart and I go, oh, right, so they've done this over here and they've done that there. And I just see the chapter in a different way. It's probably not the greatest of my things that I do, but when you work in this kind of environment, you see things all the time. So I think it's good to look at other people's books and see how they've brought things together. For example, I recently read it was a novel and it was called Where the Crawdads Sing, and I was captivated from the moment I opened the book, and the writing was powerful and it led me through the story and I saw such amazing pictures. And I feel to myself, when if I ever get to that point that I'm going to write a novel, I'd like to write it. I'd like to take inspiration from there. So have a look at other people's books. A week of observation. I always think that if you're going to write something and you might not have a week, but just take some time to observe. So what I find happens is I've got my journal, and I'm thinking about this chapter that I'm going to write. And what happens is I get stuff coming from all over the place. And suddenly I find that where I thought I was headed, actually more things that need healing come up. So a week of observation is just working with your journal, writing down anything that comes up, just notice what you notice. So then the next thing I want to ask you is, what is your story? So every chapter in a book, or if you're writing a chapter for a collaborative book, what is your story? How has it impacted your life? How does it or will it impact others when they hear it? Our story is about lessons and learning and growth, and we want to get that stuff across because we want to inspire people. Now, what have you noticed in starting to scribble in your journal? Do you have a theme arising? Did you start with an idea of what this chapter was going to be, and then other things have come up? Just keep journaling and reflecting. And often what happens is you think you've got a theme, and then it'll change, but it's still based on the other theme, but you have a lot more clarity. So, for example, the chapter I'm writing for the Healing Book Project, my theme is about being powerless, bullying, anger, and then that journey to self-love, self-worth, and the confidence to be me and claim what I want. So I think it's helpful if you could write down the theme of my chapter is. And then what is your chapter about? So you've got those themes, they're going to run through. So what is this chapter about? And I just like to write, this chapter explores, and then whatever that might be. So it might be, this chapter explores feeling powerless to help my mum when she was bullied, and how this has led to me internalizing feelings of anger and shame, and then the impact that has on my life. And then this chapter takes you on a journey from feeling powerless to reclaiming personal power. Now, some of that might change, and that's what this framework idea is you use your journal, you get it out, and then you start to refine it. And lots and lots of, like I say, lots of stuff will come up, and you're just going to get more and more clarity. You're going to get ideas and memories and inspiration, and you might go off and chat to someone who might give you a different angle on the story. All I can say is trust this process. Now, the next thing we do is the what, the why, the how, and the what if. And that's about gaining clarity. So what is this chapter about? Why is it important for the reader to read it? How might my reader apply my insights? And the what if is where you explore through different kinds of questions and thinking points. Now, if you're writing a story, all of that might seem a little clinical. Try it, experiment with it. If I'm writing, what I do with the what if is I write something like, imagine if this were your life. That's a thinking point. So, when you write story, you can drop those kind of things in. But I'm asking you to be a little bit more clinical about it now. So we want to do the what, the why, the how, and the what if, just really to cement the ideas that we've got. And you see, you might find some resistance in doing this, and you might not know what to write. Do you know what? Just put your pen to paper and write anything. A word, truly doesn't matter. Then we want to think about chapter introductions. So when we start our chapters, we need to set the scene with an introduction. And it leads people gently in, and then they get them ready for what is to come. So, for example, in something I've written, one of my examples is opening the chapter, I was faced with a rare and unusual sight, my husband's penis. And straight away, people are going to be thinking, where was this thing? Or, how did this lead to whatever's going to come next? In another chapter I've started, the quirky array of small rooms with little light in my home held me as a mother might swaddle and hold a baby. And then that leads you into the next part of whatever that story is. And then another one might be, looking back, it came as no surprise that I was pulled over during winter and made to stop, reflect, and go into a period of gestation. So they might not be the best examples in the world, but they're my examples. But just write a sentence, a chapter, a paragraph, something that helps you to start to think about how you're going to start your chapter. So in this chapter, we're seeking to answer these questions. So if I take my example, I'm going to write myself some questions down because it helps to keep me focused. Remember what I said? I have my chapter framework and I end up over there somewhere. So what is feeling powerless and angry to me? Why is it important for me to connect to my emotions, to fully understand why I've acted or behaved the way that I have? How can I create the right conditions to heal? And what if I never healed and changed the way I lived my life? And what if I did? So they're journaling questions. They're not necessarily things that you're going to, you're not going to, add those into the chapter, but you might remember the what if. You might say in your story, and how would you feel if you were powerless and angry? What if we never connect to our emotions? And then you carry on telling the story. So core message, what is the core message of the chapter, every chapter has an identity. It's you, your chapter, your story are connected. And what we want to do is create images, tell stories, and move people emotionally. And we do want to answer those questions, and we want to deliver value. But most importantly, we want to inspire and motivate people to connect with us. And then we've got the outcomes. What is the outcome you want for the reader? How do you want them to feel? And what kind of action do you want them to take? We can never guarantee an action. However, we need to set that intention. So this is not about writing your chapter or your story. This is just about answering some questions, getting some clarity so that when you come to write, it will all flow. So I hope that's really, really helpful. And I'm Dale, and you can find me at daledarley.com.